My name is JP Gladu. My Indigenous spirit name is Mokwete, which means bear heart. I grew up in Thunder Bay. I'm from Sandpoint First Nation. I bebopped around the country, both Canada and a little bit in the States, focusing largely on natural resources, working with First Nations, Métis, Inuit communities from around the country, really focused on building a sustainable economy for stronger socioeconomic outcomes for our communities. So when I think about the energy sector and the growth of it, it can't go forward without the Indigenous voice. It can't go forward without our knowledge systems. It can't go forward without our workforce. And if we don't find ways to capitalize, and I think that's some of the biggest conversations, some of the biggest challenges and opportunities to capitalize our Indigenous communities to participate in this future, I think we're going to be challenged as a country. The wonderful thing about this country is that there is this growing Indigenous brain trust, this voice, this presence, this experience that is now coming to the forefront. For a very long time, our voices were not heard. We weren't taken seriously. And when you get Indigenous leaders that have been in the trenches, are prolific, are very bright, very experienced, and then you get them in a room together, that is a powerful place to be. You would think that the report was actually written by Indigenous people, and it was a beautiful thing to create meaningful space because I think the outcomes were substantial. Future fit hydrocarbons are essentially how we're going to relate to our energy sector going forward. There's the ATCO project around my own First Nation. We have lithium assets, so they're the critical batteries, critical minerals. So all these things that are actually going to contribute to the way that we actually produce and use energy. And we've just got to get good at it. So it's really thinking about what we have today, where we need to get to. If we're talking about a net zero economy, it's going to take change to get there. And all these assets and future assets and technology is going to be a really important conversation and mix to make sure that we can have that sustainable future. We often say nothing about us without us. Having Indigenous voices at the table, right from the frontline workers to management, to C-suites, to board of directors, making sure that there are Indigenous voices throughout. At the end of the day, that voice is going to empower the organizations that are having impact in our country, and it's going to increase the competitive edge that we need in this country that's been lacking for some time. And I believe that the Indigenous voice is going to be a key component to successfully delivering an energy future that we all need. There are three things that we need to think about when it comes to Canada's competitiveness globally. And a lot of it focuses around Indigenous inclusion, Indigenous economic reconciliation. We need to make sure that we've got capital pools. And the Alberta Indigenous Opportunities Corporation is a fine example of how to leverage provincial backstop to support Indigenous equity participation in projects. I had the opportunity to contribute to what has now become Alberta's emissions reduction and energy development plan, and that was a very rich experience to be in the room with industry leaders and policymakers, and for the Indigenous voice to have room and to have that voice taken seriously. When we carry forward the Indigenous voice in the energy transition and the energy policy, having industry and Indigenous relationships is fundamental in making sure we have the good data and making sure that we've got the storyline that we can all buy into, because it's important. We can find the balance between sustainable development and environmental protection because we have that. And it's Indigenous led. If you get to know us, we're going to get to know you. And if we get to know each other in a good way, exceptional outcomes are possible.